Oh. Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam, and welcome to my first big video of 2021. You know, when I was planning this all out about a month ago, I was thinking to myself, this will be a fun video to make. I am incredibly stupid, because I decided to rewatch and make a video all about the Michael Bay Transformer movies. No, I don't know what I was thinking either. In general terms, the Michael Bay Transformers movies are seen as obnoxious and are generally disliked by a vast majority of people. When people ask what's wrong with modern blockbusters today, every single finger points towards these movies. Even the good ones are really not given a ton of respect, and the bad ones are seen as the absolute bottom of the barrel, which is an insult to barrels. And despite the fact that he has been directing movies, television commercials, and music videos since the mid-1990s, when people think of Michael Bay, their mind immediately snaps to these movies. I remember when these movies were coming out near the tail end of the 2010s, and I just remember the white-hot hatred for not only Michael Bay, but just these movies in general. People got sick of them real quick. But for some strange reason, I have always been drawn back to want to rewatch them. Maybe it's because I generally don't hold a lot of the same film opinions as others, or maybe it's just the feeling that I want to try and find things out for myself. Whatever the case may be, here we are. I sat through all of the Transformers movies for the first time in a very long time, and here are my findings. But first, a couple of caveats. Number one, I'm going to try and make this just about the Transformers movies and not a big expose on Michael Bay himself. Number one, that is a video I want to do in the future, and number two, Patrick H. Willems and Lindsay Ellis's videos pretty much covered that subject in about as good a fashion as possible, so I would pretty much be adding nothing to the conversation. And number two, I will not be talking about Bumblebee from 2018, because that was not directed by Michael Bay. He was only a producer. So for that reason alone, I am taking it off the table. And honestly, my thoughts on that movie are just kinda... it exists for me. To be honest, I saw that movie, Aquaman, and Mary Poppins Returns all in one night, and so my memories of that movie are just kind of mixed together. So with all the grandstanding and the hot dogging out of the way, let's roll out and talk about the Michael Bay Transformer movies. Transformers from 2007. By the time of 2007, Michael Bay had a checkered reputation, mostly thanks to movies like Pearl Harbor and Bad Boys 2. So when it was announced that he was going to be directing this movie, people were furious. Initially, Bay didn't even want to direct the movie. He thought the original script was too much, for kids. But he was eventually talked into it by his idol, Steven Spielberg, who was a legit Transformers fan and wanted to produce this movie. The first Transformers has a middling reception on Rotten Tomatoes. It is rotten, but it's just barely rotten, like in high 50s. But despite all of that, and in a trend that we will see throughout this entire franchise, despite critical mixture, it made over $700 million at the box office, making it one of the highest grossing movies of the year. And rewatching this movie through 2021 eyes, I gotta say, this movie is very dumb, but I will admit, I had a blast. Don't get me wrong, this is still very much a Michael Bay movie, with his fingerprints pretty much all over it. From the product placement, to his love of the military, his absolute loathing of the government, except for the Jon Voight character for some reason. Shia LaBeouf's character being relatively ineffectual until the very end. All kinds of hot women. And a mixture of practical and visual effects that can sometimes be a little confusing, but at most times is just kinda fine. But out of all of the Michael Bay Transformers movies, this was by far and away the most fun one of the bunch. For a variety of reasons. First is the score, done by Steven Jablonsky, who is absolutely the hero of all of these movies. No matter what you think of their quality, the scores in these movies are absolutely top tier. I can't play it because of copyright, but go back and listen to the track Arrival to Earth from the Transformers soundtrack. You will get goosebumps. I also found myself really enjoying the cinematography. Michael Bay has a habit of mixing in practical effects with CGI. Sometimes this doesn't work. However, for the most part, in the first Transformers movie, I think it does really work. When something explodes, you see it and you hear it. And the cinematography done by Mitchell Admonson is really, really, really well done. But, as I said, this is very much a Michael Bay joint, which means that his humor is in there as well. And you're probably going to notice the trend of Michael Bay's humor absolutely ruining parts of these movies. In Sam Witwicky's very first scene in this movie, he's making a presentation of his family genealogy, and he's talking about his great-grandfather, Captain Archibald Witwicky, who was a famous seaman. I have a feeling you already know the jokes that Michael Bay told. It's the most basic, bottom-level, juvenile type of humor. And I'm not the type of person to be a stickler for humor, especially nowadays, but watching some of these jokes through 2021 eyes, wow, it's just very cringy. Maybe it was because of the influence of Steven Spielberg, or maybe it was having something to do with another element of this movie. The humor in the movie is there in parts, and it is noticeable, but when looked at the context of the other movies, it is definitely toned down. But again, out of all of these movies, this was by far and away the most fun out of all of them. I think the biggest compliment that I could give the 2007 Transformers is that it's a summer movie. It's a movie that should be seen on the biggest screen you could possibly find, but you really shouldn't think about how much effort was put into it. In the words of Sean Chandler, this is a Taco Bell movie. You probably don't want to know what went into the Taco Bell, but it tastes good going down. This is the best of the Michael Bay Transformers movie, and it's not even a contest. But soon afterwards, a mere 2 years in fact, the series went down the crapper, and I don't think it ever came back. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, aka Headache, the movie. This is very much a direct sequel to the first Transformers, with all of the returning players coming in there. Sam, Michaela, Colonel Lennox, Tyrese. I'm sure he has a character name, but I'm just going to call him Tyrese. And the same Michael Bay sensibilities are in this movie. The love of the military, the hatred of the government. I could go on, but I already talked about that in the last segment. But whether it was because of the last movie's success or not, Michael Bay is given a little more creative control here, and when he's given an inch, he takes 5 miles. There are too many painful moments to talk about, and I'm probably going to miss some obvious ones. But whatever ones I do miss, I'm sure you are all thinking about them. Leave them in the comments below. I don't want to be alone in this. Sam Witwicky's mom being given a pot brownie, and that whole scene which feels like it lasts about 10 years. The female Decepticon, whose main power is she's got a really long tongue. I'm sure there's more to unpack there, but I am not in the pay grade to do that. The 2 Autobots named Mudflap and Skids. Again, I am definitely not qualified to talk about that. But what I will say is that I'm not sure if these two are meant to be racist or if they're just there just to be ineffectual. I want to hate it, but I just want to be clear as to why. The cloying government official who is just there to wag his finger and bark out orders. He eventually gets some kind of comeuppance, but he is there. and my god, he gets old real quick. John Turturro wearing a thong. No, I will not be showing you a picture of that because I actually care about your eyes. And then the king of all cringe himself, Leo. Excuse me. This is Tylenol. Leo is one of the most annoying characters I have seen in any movie ever. And I think I've seen a lot of movies, folks. And whenever Leo and Simmons are together, I just want to walk myself into the sea. Simmons kind of redeems himself when he tases Leo about 3/4 of the way into the movie. I wanted to see it again, and I watched it about 24 times. And the thing about Revenge of the Fallen is that the story, on paper, actually sounds pretty good. But you gotta wade through a lot of crap just to get there. The biggest compliment that I could give to Revenge of the Fallen is the forest fight. That was actually good. And in fact, my favorite part of this movie is when Optimus Prime is getting beaten down by the Decepticons and he says, "You'll never stop at one! I'll take you all on!" And he stomps mud holes into Starscream, into Megatron, and then finds the biggest of the Decepticons and tears his head off. And he takes the body over his shoulder and throws him away and says, "Piece of tin." That's excellent. The rest of the movie is 2.5 hours of a massive migraine. I felt bad for Josh Duhamel and Shia LaBeouf and Tyrese and Megan Fox because it wasn't their fault. They had to work with this awful screenplay. I used to think that this was the worst of them. But no, we've still got that to go. But in the sake of running order, let's just talk about Dark of the Moon. Transformers Dark of the Moon is the best movie other than the first one. It is not the best Transformers movie, period, like all around, but it's second best. After Revenge of the Fallen, which was just awful, nobody had any faith in these movies anymore. But when the trailers and the eventual movie came out of Dark of the Moon, people were like, okay, that wasn't bad, but I guess it wasn't really good either. And similar to the first movie, the very juvenile humor is toned way down. Minus one section where I think it was just all the bad jokes were given to Ken Jeong and say, go to town. Ken Jeong is a doctor. From what I hear, Ken Jeong is a very nice guy. But whenever I saw him in Dark of the Moon, I wanted to walk myself into the sea. Again. Thankfully, he's only in that one scene, so his annoyance is contained. Unlike Leo. Simmons is there, again, but at the very least, he's kind of useful and has a bit of weirdly good chemistry with Frances McDormand. Oh, by the way, they drugged Frances McDormand into this crap. Thank God her best years were ahead of her. And I think just in general, Transformers Dark of the Moon was a step up from Revenge of the Fallen. Revenge of the Fallen had taken this series to a new level, a level which is generously called the basement. However, Dark of the Moon actually took it up to the living room. It's not as bad as 2, but it's not as good as 1. Out of all of these movies, Shia LaBeouf is given the most to do, and I like him as an actor, so that was very nice to see. He would star in much better movies, but at least he was given a nice juicy story arc here. And while I did miss Megan Fox, I enjoyed his relationship with his girlfriend Carly, played by, check notes, Rosie Huntington Whiteley, hope I'm saying that right, and having Leonard Nimoy there was a nice touch as well. But did they really have to have him say the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? Because when I heard that, I just thought of this quote from another member of the USS Enterprise.
Up your shaft.
And honestly, I thought Patrick Dempsey as the human villain was actually not bad. Again, when I saw him and I was like, oh no, I forgot this movie had a human villain. No, God. But he actually has a pretty good monologue near the halfway point, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but he was one of the best parts of the movie. And again, at the end of the day, this movie was definitely not as good as 1, but it definitely is not as bad as 2. It operates that middle ground of, it's just okay. But that would be the last time this series would breathe the rarefied air of just okay. Because the last 2 movies are just the dirt worst. And I guess it's time to talk about the even longer headache that is Transformers Age of Extinction. I'm not having fun, you guys. When I first saw this movie, I thought it was just there. It existed. I didn't understand the visceral hatred for it. But now after rewatching it, I understand. And I am a little offended, because this movie was the highest grossing movie of 2014. Think about how good a year for movies 2014 was. Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Nightcrawler, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, my favorite movie of that year, Whiplash. All of them did peanuts compared to this god-awful crap. Transformers Age of Extinction had no right to make as money as it did. It's awful. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes of my life that I'm never getting back. Like, why did I choose to do this? I'm such an ass! I apologize for my outburst. Let's continue. At this point, pretty much everything that we had known about the Transformers movies was pretty much gone in Age of Extinction. Shia LaBeouf was nowhere to be found, Carly was nowhere to be found, and instead, we got Mark Wahlberg. I like Mark Wahlberg. I think he can be a good actor, like in The Fighter or anything directed by Peter Berg. Okay, most anything. And his sort of charm is an attempt to try and make the movie good. But in the words of Ron White, you can't fix stupid. And this movie is all kinds of stupid. Basically, the movie tries to do some kind of social commentary because of the big Battle of Chicago that happened at the end of Dark of the Moon. I'm sorry, the opportunity to do social commentary was ditched a long time ago and there was no getting it back. Rewatching this movie for the first time in about 7 years reminded me of the Marvel comics from 2002. If you've never heard of these comics, well, good, and I feel bad for having to bring these to your attention, but it's the most apt comparison that I could give, so here it is. In 2002, there was this big contest at Marvel Comics called You Decide, where the president at the time, Bill Jemas, basically made a bet with 2 other writers for them to write a mini-series to see which would sell better. Bill Jemas' contribution was Marvel, which started out as a very bad parody comic of Ted Turner and DC Comics. No, I'm not kidding, that actually happened. And by the end was trying to be some kind of pseudo-philosophical, commentary book about life and death and religion and peace and war. It was terrible and is seen as one of the worst comics ever made. Honestly, Linkara's whole mini-series where he reviews every one of those is some of my favorite content on this entire platform. So go check that out if you're interested. But why do I bring this all up? Well, when I was watching Age of Extinction, I was consistently flashing back to Marvel. How a creative force who can be talented at times, but was just well out of his depth, tried to talk out of his ass about things that were well above his pay grade. And his vehicle for doing this was these giant robots.
It didn't work.
When Titus Welliver's character basically leans into Mark Wahlberg's character and says, "How dare you betray our kind for alien metal?" That was my biggest facepalm moment of this entire series. And the biggest insult was that this movie drug poor Stanley Tucci and Kelsey Grammer into this crap. They deserve so much better. Kelsey Grammer didn't even make a tossed salad and scrambled eggs reference to try and liven this up. Like, missed opportunity. And the always annoying T.J. Miller, when his character dies, I was supposed to be sad, but I was happy he was gone. God, I really just don't want to do this. Anyway, Age of Extinction is the worst of these movies by a significant margin. Because at least 2 has that forest fight and there's some moments of promise. But this movie just not only did a 630 over the shark, but did a double moonsault as well over said shark. And a shooting star press for good measure. This was the movie where Michael Bay lost the plot. And the next movie basically showed him stopping caring in real time. Transformers: The Last Knight was the final one of these movies. And it should have ended after 3, but here we are. Rewatching this for the first time since I saw it in the theaters, wow, there are so many choices made in this movie that I was completely baffled. This movie had 6 editors, and yet it is the most confusing out of all of these movies. This movie tries to reestablish the lore and say that the Transformers have been around throughout human history, even as far back as King Arthur. Never mind the fact that in the first movie they placed the Allspark, their big life force thing, at about 10,000 BC. And not only that, but in Age of Extinction, they said that the Transformers killed the dinosaurs. Pick a starting point to your lore and stick to it. But that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the story choices, because the visual choices, whoa, Nelly, that's just so bad. Basically, this movie goes from aspect ratio to aspect ratio at a near, once per second basis. And it's pretty dang noticeable, to the point where I was just, when it started happening, I was sitting there like, oh, that's pretty annoying, I hope it goes away. Spoiler alert, it does not. Imagine, if you will, that I started out the video like this, and then went like this. That would get pretty annoying after a while, only if I went back. It would pretty noticeable, right? Well, turns out, no. Here we are again. I would get a ton of comments saying, stop doing that. Maybe movies should have comment sections, because it would just be filled with, stop messing with the aspect ratio. And to be honest, the action scenes did have some potential. However, because the action scenes kept going like this, it was just so hard to focus on. It was about halfway through the movie when I realized what this movie actually was. Michael Bay losing all motivation to try. In real time. I don't think it's that small of a coincidence that his latest movie, Six Underground, went straight to Netflix. Because in this movie, it clearly shows that he's just throwing a bunch of Transformers crap on the screen and saying, hey, people will pay us, right? Well, this was the lowest grossing movie of the franchise, so maybe not. Mark Wahlberg is back. He's fine. His daughter's not there, and the weird Irish guy is not there. He's there just for us to relate to somebody. There's a little girl there, and I completely forgot about her. Optimus Prime is a bad guy because plot convenience, I suppose. And I don't know, I was just thoroughly drained by these movies that I was just like, sure, do whatever the hell you want to do. And at the end of the day, I couldn't be bothered with this movie. I couldn't be mad at it, but I couldn't be happy about it either. It's really the only forgettable one of the bunch, minus the whole aspect ratio crap. And when I heard the credits of The Last Night, I was just so happy. I was so happy that it was over. And now that I've rewatched all of these movies, I see why people see them as obnoxious and are generally disliked. Because just in general, this is just Michael Bay being Michael Bay, but he's given a bigger budget than in any of his other movies. This may be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I actually like Michael Bay as a filmmaker. Like, look at his music video and commercial work. The dude has mad talent. Like, that Got Milk commercial, you know, the one where the guy goes, Burr! Like, that one? That has a permanent place in the Museum of Modern Art. They don't just give that stuff out to anyone. So the guy has a lot of talent. But I feel like his talent gets wasted a lot of times. I want to like him, but then he's got Transformers 2 and 4 on his resume. And Pearl Harbor. And Pain and Gain, one of the worst movies I've ever seen. So, it's hard. It really is. He can direct some of the worst movies I've ever seen, and yet The Rock and Armageddon are in the Criterion Collection. And I double-checked. They're still there. And I said I wouldn't turn this into a Michael Bay expose, and I'm trying my hardest not to. But when it comes to these movies, they're very much reflective of Michael Bay's thinking process when it comes to movies. He started out, and he was doing good. 2 was a massive step down, but then 3 was like, okay, I like where we're going. But then 4, it seemed like he tried to take a big risk by trying to, like, say, okay, let's get down to business. And nobody wanted to see that. And by the 5th one, it was just like he just threw his hands up and was like, alright, whatever. If there is a lasting legacy to these movies, I honestly don't know what they would be. Other than the fact that, well, nobody really likes them. Would I recommend any of these movies to you? If there are any, I would recommend the first one, because out of all of the movies, that was by far and away the most fun. If you can get past a lot of the awkward humor and some of the shaky cam, I do recommend it. The rest, you could pretty much forget about. Well, that was an interesting experiment. I think I lost a few brain cells, but if you all made it this far into the video, thank you so much, because one of my goals for this channel in 2021 is to make longer videos like this one, just to challenge myself. Boy, I picked a wrong thing to do that with. But, guys, thank you so much as always for watching. What are your thoughts on the Transformer movies? Leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say, if you like any of these movies at all. And 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be doing another one of these, I want to say binge watches. I think that's what the kids are saying nowadays. But I'm going to be talking about all of the Alien movies. Yes, from Alien to Alien Covenant. So look forward to that 2 Sundays from now. But if you like this video, please be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, and if you like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, when a new video drops, you will be the first to know. My name is Ryan Cam, and let's roll out.